Before I open the meeting officially, I want to remind everyone that if you wish to speak on the petition, that you must be signed in at the podium. I'm assuming you guys have already done so with the representation here today. If there are multiple people that are wishing to speak, I ask that you guys keep your comments within 3 minutes or under 3 minutes. Please be mindful and respectful of each other, and I plan on having a good meeting. As I said, keep those comments brief. And if things have been brought up before, let's just try to bring up some new information. And let's just have a smooth meeting. We'll go ahead and call the regular meeting for April 8th, 2026 to order. Let's all rise for a pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Here.
Scott Highlander, Sam Payne, Isaac Chavez, Charles Bates.
Here. Just a quick note to the agenda here. We've had election of officers for like on here, so let's just take that off, please.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No problem. Okay, we'll go ahead and take a look at the minutes over the last couple months, starting with the ones from November 2025. All three of us were here, so I'll entertain a motion to the board if you have reviewed those minutes.
I'll make a motion. We approve the November 20th minutes.
Second.
First and a second, roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez,
Aye.
Charles Bates.
I have a quick correction on January minutes. It does say for 2025, should be 2026, correct? And the same for, not the same, but for minutes for March, all three of us were, I don't think we can collectively pass this, so we'll need to table those minutes. If I could have a motion to table minutes for January of 2026 and March. Go ahead and open that to the board.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. We table those two, January and March.
I will second. First and a second, and a roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez,
Aye.
Charles Bates.
All right, moving forward, I need to check with the board. If there's any conflict of interest with petitions being heard tonight, I just want to note for the board, I did notice one of my family members is on the applicant. Just want to note that there's been no discussion or nothing. I'm sure they can confirm that as well. It is the Lopez family. Just want to state that for the record.
Docket number 5.
All right, moving forward. I just want to check that there's been no contact with anyone with board members with petitioners being heard before tonight that is potentially being discussed. All right, hearing none, moving forward, we'll go ahead and take a look at new business. We will start with public hearing docket 2026-003. The petitioners Guillermo and Eloisa requesting a special exception for the following. The special exception is to allow a duplex on a B residential district. Ms. Liz Stitzel, can we please have the staff report?
Yes, can you, want to make sure that picks me up. All right. So the site is 1009 South Columbia Street, Frankfort, Indiana. This is a request for what is in the ordinance use 2.03, which is a dwelling that's either a conversion or a two-family for sale or rent. We would commonly call this a duplex on Table A of the Unified Development Ordinance. The property is zoned B residential, as you noted, as is every property surrounding it in all directions. The surrounding property is mostly conforming single-family dwellings, but there is a religious organization building to the immediate north in the residential district, which religious organizations are typically permitted in all zoning districts. So that's not necessarily surprising. The house itself has been there for a while. It's on the east side of South Columbia Street, about halfway between West Freeman and West Meredith Street. At some point in the past, there was either an accessory apartment or a duplex within this house. It does have two completely separate areas inside of it, one downstairs and one upstairs. You enter the front porch and then they separate on the inside to their different sides. But most recently, a previous owner was living in the lower unit, so the upstairs would have been considered an accessory apartment, but it was partially gutted due to roof leaks and general disrepair. The property has since sold. The new owner would like to repair the structure and use the two units inside to rent separately without having to live in one like what an accessory apartment approval would require. BZA approval of that request is required for him to pull remodel permits to repair and then rent the units in the structure. On the second page, there's just an aerial view here. You can see, I didn't put the zoning map over it because everything is B residential that you see. And then there's a picture looking east from South Columbia Street of the structure from the outside. There's no exterior additions planned. Everything that they're doing would just be keeping the room divisions and everything the same on the inside, but going ahead and modernizing it. So on the third page, just for your reference, I've cut out a section of table A1 so that you can see that line for two-family and how it comes across the B residential with the special exception. In terms of request analysis, special exception findings, which all must be found affirmatively in order to approve, are as follows. First, that the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. So a duplex conversion of an existing house or the legalization of a duplex in an existing house is a special exception in the B residential district, which just means it may or may not be appropriate in any given location. This particular location is able to meet all the required parking standards for this use without adding additional parking or being on street. The applicant is not planning to make additions to the building, so the neighborhood is not going to see any dramatic change to this structure from the outside. The only thing that does relate to this finding that staff thinks needs to happen in order to meet it is the Unified Development Ordinance does state that second-story apartments shall not have exterior stairways. In this case, the second unit is entirely upstairs. There is a stairway on the south side of the building that is in somewhat poor repair and is exterior. And that does need to be enclosed as part of the remodel process, so it is conforming to Frankfurt's requirements if you're going to approve a duplex in this location. If the stairs are enclosed, then this finding would be met. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other property or persons and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So while it was likely just an accessory apartment, there have been 2 units in this dwelling in the past that were in use. According to utilities, there's been separate meters on these as long as anybody can remember, so it's not something new that there's a division. It's not a recent conversion. There's no record of complaints from neighbors in the previous decades, and given the new owner will do all the repairs within the existing house footprint, the finding would appear to be met. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped, so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent building and property does not impair health, safety, general welfare, or comfort, nor adversely affect the values of adjacent properties. Again, there's no additions planned, nor changes of interior floor plan if the approval is granted. From the outside, other than needing to enclose the stairs, there should be no difference in how the property affects or relates to adjacent properties. The finding would appear to be met. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood and will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses already legally permitted in the district. So staff would not anticipate any change to the general neighborhood environment. At most, a couple more cars. You have 4 cars for a duplex, may park here than what's been here recently since the upstairs hasn't been occupied in recent history. But the setbacks and the appearance of the property will not change and may even improve with the repairs the applicant plans to do. Approving a duplex here should not impede the ability of neighbors to continue to have single-family dwellings nearby as they always have. The finding would appear to be met. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. So there's a pretty long driveway already on this property with some additional concrete behind the house. It's long enough for 4 vehicles as required by the Unified Development Ordinance, which says you should have 2 for each residential unit. The driveway is already providing that off-street parking, and as no new curb cuts are being created, no change in traffic path or movements relative to adjacent streets is anticipated. The standard would appear to be met. 6, the proposed use has taken or will take adequate measures to provide utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities. So this is an existing structure. They're not planning to add on to it or change it or tear it down and put something new here. So there's not something new that has to be addressed, but we did check with both Frankfurt Utilities and the county surveyor. Neither one had any concerns or issues in terms of approving a duplex in this filing, so the standard would appear to be met. And 7, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and shall be consistent with the City of Frankfort's comprehensive plan. So the Unified Development Ordinance clearly states that this is a special exception use, meaning it may be appropriate to approve in the B residential districts in some situations. The Unified Development Ordinance also requires stairs to the upstairs apartment to be interior. This proposal involves converting an existing structure in a way that meets building code and the standards of the Unified Development Ordinance to do updates and provide 2 safe living units in an existed dividing structure. Approving this use would seem to promote the objectives of the ordinance as long as the owner brings everything up to code and encloses the exterior stairs as part of the house so that it continues to look like a single-family dwelling from the outside. The 2035 comprehensive plan generally notes that B residential land is primarily for single-family dwelling use, with 2-family and duplex uses considered in appropriate locations by special exception. Additionally, some elements of the plan that have some relevance are page 5 on the initial overall community characteristics, where it states to offer housing meeting residents' lifetime needs in accessible, connected neighborhoods, and having housing developed in public spaces that reflect community needs. On page 10, part 2, growth management, noting that population growth should be accommodated by utilizing existing housing stock, which would be what this would be, is having an additional unit within the existing housing stock, vacant land in existing city limits, and adjacent land in the urban growth area boundary. And then on page 18, part 3, under community living, it says to limit future multifamily uses and eliminate existing illegal conversions, meaning houses that have been, this would be a situation where we are trying to eliminate something illegal and have something that's good quality and that is legal. So this would specifically state that any 2-family or multifamily structures shall obtain approval from either the Plan Commission through rezoning or the Board of Zoning Appeals through approval as a special exception, which is the path this applicant is taking. And the one staff would recommend, since a rezoning would put something where you could have multi-unit apartments, not just a duplex. So allowing a duplex with 2 separate rentable units would fit within the comprehensive plan as long as it follows the standards in the Unified Development Ordinance, is repaired so it meets all building codes, and is approved by this board. The finding would appear to be met. Consequently, staff recommends to approve the special exception based on the findings in the staff report, with the conditions that the applicant must enclose the exterior stairway as part of the house and must ensure both units meet all building codes to the building inspector's satisfaction. I did not receive any letters of complaint or comment on this ahead. Did you receive any?
Yes, I believe there were some people that were here to.
Did we have anything in the form of a letter?
No.
Okay, so there may be some public comment, but
Okay.
nothing was received ahead of the meeting that we either responded to or disseminated to the board to read.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We'd like to say something.
Okay, we'll get to that in just one moment here. Thank you, Liz. Thank you for the report. At this time, we'll call on the petitioner to speak on the report, add any additional information or any comments they would like to speak. This would be your time. No additional comments, okay. What was
He
that?
said he's just waiting on your answer.
Okay. Okay, at this time, we will now open discussion for the public.
If you could
Please come up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, my name is Pat Ehrlich, and my husband is back there. His name is John Ehrlich. We live across the street from where this duplex is going to be or may be built. We are concerned that there will not be enough parking space, definitely. It's tight enough as it is now, and I'm thinking even if you have 2 people in each place, there's at least 4 vehicles. that's going to have to take up more space on Columbia Street in our section of Columbia Street, and I just think it's going to be really tight. So I'm concerned about that a lot. Also, I would like to say that Don and I, we are both Americans, we are homeowners, we are taxpayers, and we are voters, and I hope that counts for something. And I just like you to really consider that about how that you would feel if you had less space to park vehicles in front of your homes and how you would appreciate that. So, thank you.
I will note as staff, Rob's not here. He's been through that, but I've also been through that unit. I believe there's one bedroom in the downstairs and 2 small bedrooms in the upstairs, if I remember correctly. So you've got 3 bedrooms total in that house between the 2 units.
Any additional comments from the public? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close discussion for the public. We will now open discussion for the board. I do have a question. Has this been a duplex before? And what was the parking like before? Has it ever been a problem?
So this is an interesting situation in that it may well have been a duplex at some point in the past, even before the ordinance, which would make it legal nonconforming. However, if it was, the previous owners were evading paying taxes as a duplex, and it has been listed and taxed as a single-family dwelling. So administratively, the policy is if something is vague and you're not paying taxes on it properly, then it's considered to be an illegal conversion. And then we know recently the owner was living in one of the units. So even if it was a legal nonconforming, if it went more than 1 year not used as a duplex, it would have lost that approval. So at most, it would be a accessory apartment, which means in order to use it that way, the owner has to live in one of the 2 units and then can only rent the other unit. So the buyer could do that right now without coming to the BZA. As far as we can tell, it has continuously been used with the owner in one unit, for more than a year. And then at some point in the past, people, the utilities kind of tell us that it's had 2 meters and it's been used separately for a long, long time. But it just kind of gets a little bit muddy as you go back. And since it would have lost any legal nonconformity, officially, we would consider it to be a assumed special exception because of predating for a accessory apartment in the primary structure. It can't go back to being a full duplex, having been used that way more than a year without the board approval, but it can be used as 2 units as long as the owner moves into one of them, is how it sits right now. But no, it's not, we don't believe that this has been a recent division, whether it happened in the 60s or 70s illegally, or whether it predates the 66 ordinance. Because it wasn't reported on taxes, there's no way to know, but it's been a long-standing, it's not new to the neighborhood, it's definitely, and when you go through it, all the dividing walls are like, the old stuff is plaster, lath, it's not something somebody remodeled yesterday as far as that original division. So we think it's been illegal as a duplex for a significant amount of time before. The policy is if you weren't honest about it and you didn't pay the taxes to the city as a duplex, then from a zoning standpoint, if it isn't clearly traceable, then our standpoint would be to say this wasn't properly legalized through the BZA. It was just something illegal that was fortunate enough not to have received a complaint.
So is there do you happen to know if there's a separate entrance to the upstairs apartment from the porch?
No. So, and you could make it a commitment that can't change. So right now you walk into the porch through a single door. And then once you get into that porch, the door on the right goes into the downstairs unit, which is a living room. There's kind of a bedroom area on the right, and then there's a kitchen in the back, and then a back door behind. On the left, there's a door that goes up a set of stairs, and you make a right, and you're kind of an area that's like a living area. And then as you turn left down the hall, there's some bedroom space on the right. There's a very small kitchen on the left. And then you've got a bathroom. And then you have an exterior entrance to those exterior stairs that comes out the back. And that is separate. That side entrance is the back door. Correct. Now, how somebody living there might use it. If you're parking, you might end up going in your back door. And
you know, the ordinance would state that that's got to be completely enclosed, so it all looks like it's part of one house. I suppose, you know, it'd be up to you if you wanted them to turn it around so it opened next to the other back door. You know, I mean, that's stuff the BZA can decide, but the front door is a single shared and then the back is
And
two.
and then I had a question on, I couldn't find anything, so maybe I just don't know where it is. How are we calling a long driveway 4 parking spots?
So a parking spot needs to be 20 foot long by 8 foot wide,
So-
roughly. So you just sort of measure the space you have in pavement. So in this case, you've got an RV shape size pad behind the house that kind of runs into that driveway, and then that garage that runs straight, and then you've got the drive that comes out to the street.
So are we counting the driveway surface as parking?
Correct. Yep, which is how we do with all houses. If if you built a house, we don't usually count inside garages because not all people put their cars in the garage.
I don't know how logistically you have 2 separate families share one access point of a driveway and park. I mean, they'd have to have agreements between tenants on who can, hey, you have to move your car out, so I can.
Correct. The
count.
landlord would have to work that out in terms of
So-
who parked on which side of that. It's a fairly, I mean, it's a decent width drive.
I mean, I've
but
been
it's-
there.
Yeah,
I
the landlord would have to work that out in terms of who got to park on the pad in the back or on the side or
And
in
I'd
what
call
way.
that pad more of a patio. I wouldn't call it a parking spot.
Depends on how you use it.
Yeah.
It's all kind of at grade as you come around. It's the same, yeah,
Yeah.
I think you could definitely look at it either
So
way.
I guess what I'm asking is, we're not counting the garage,
No,
but we are counting the back cement pad and some of the driveway space.
the entirety of the driveway space for I think 4 cars would fit in.
I don't think that meets
But that,
the intention of 4 parking spots. If you can't access the 4 spots, then I find that maybe it's something that we need to address as access to the 4 parking spots has to be available at all times, or
Yeah, although on a
So
single family, are you gonna tell somebody they can't park one behind? Because you're gonna
Yeah,
get into
that's
the same
true.
thing. We require 2 spots per dwelling. So that would then mean you'd require a double wide driveway instead of letting people park one behind the next and the wife tells the husband, get out of my way, I need to go to the store, or whatever it is.
but the owner occupied accessory apartment kind of alleviates that because the owner of the house could manage that in essence versus a
Correct.
distant landlord.
Nope. And I'm not arguing your point. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I think you have a valid concern, but I also am not sure that when you look at residential 1 and 2 unit, it's not atypical, to see the parking in a driveway and assume that whoever lives there figures out how to get in and out.
so if I understand, our UDO says we have to have 2 parking spots.
Per unit.
Per unit.
So
It
there's
doesn't go
2
into a big, long
Correct.
debate about
Doesn't
how they
matter
get
where
in and
they're at.
out or any of that kind of
Correct.
stuff.
It
Okay.
does say that you shouldn't be creating major traffic snags. So let's say this whole site was on State Road 28 and was backing out onto a 4-lane. I probably would flag it as going, cars cannot back out in this location without someone dying because the traffic is moving at 55 miles an hour and they're never going to see someone backing up. But on a neighborhood street where the speed limit is under 30 miles an hour,
Sure. So-
usually
so-
you expect kids to run out, people to back out. So it's not as strict. On a new house, you'd be required to have a wider driveway, but on older structures, you don't typically require somebody to tear out an existing house and redesign a driveway to meet modern standards, if that makes sense.
So the driveway would satisfy the 4 that we talk about. What about the property? I know it's not part of the UDO, but how much space is there on the street parking in front of this building? On their property, so to speak? Can you park 2 cars out there or
It's a
3?
standard width lot, so you're looking at roughly 60 foot and wide, so maybe 2 spots because you can't park in front of the driveway. But there's no guarantee that, people park across the road on-street parking, and the ordinance does specifically say the 4 required spots have to be off-street.
Gotcha.
So any on-street is, so if the board's determination is you cannot fit 4 cars in here to park, it does not matter that you can park on the street. They would have to file an additional variance.
Gotcha.
And
I
bring that back to
understand.
be
I
considered.
was just bringing the point up.
No,
Okay.
and it's fair. I just wanted to make sure I distinguished.
Well, addressing what the
Yeah.
lady spoke of about the road place being busy, the street being busy. There is area for 2 or 3 cars to park in front of this building, whether or not they can control that or not. And there are the required 4 on the property. So
There is
I don't
space
see
for
it.
4
That's,
vehicles.
that's what I mean.
Casey's
So
concern is. Yeah.
that's to me, that's not an issue.
And I
So-
will note, if you get into commercial, it actually does add things about having to have drive widths and, it's just not in residential unless you get into 3 or more apartments in your,
The next question I had was about minimum square footage of the units. In B, it says it has to be 1,200 square feet per unit. I see that the total square footage of the house is, looks like 2,184 finished. Do we have any idea of what the,
So in this case, we already have 2 units that are pre-existing and not shrinking in size. So relative to that, you've got a legal nonconformity. Now, if you felt that was relevant to whether it's an accessory apartment or whether it's a duplex, I think you would just need to state your finding on that. But when something predates in terms of size, we wouldn't require them to build a 3rd story on the house or to build out to try to meet that.
but I think that goes to the illegal conversion. Part of our goal
Yeah.
is to take the housing stock that was unregulatedly turned into.
Yep. And make sure it meets code and it's safe and it's adequate for human habitation.
Yeah, and I think that the difference between an owner occupied versus a strictly 2-tenant building, I think we owe it to people who are going to rent in the future to consider that as, we're saying right now that the minimum needs to be 1,200.
Yep, if it was being built new from scratch
Yeah.
and it wasn't an existing structure, that would be the requirement.
So we can't require that now.
You can determine that you don't feel that it's adequate to meet the finding as a duplex and then thus deny the special exception. You can certainly make that part of your finding, but I don't think that you could approve it and then state that you're going to require them to add on because it's a pre-existing structure that has been there, over time. So, but I do think if you viewed it as it would not meet, I believe it would be your first finding if you were going to fall to that you would say it would not meet for the basis of your denial, to say that because there's not enough square footage in the upstairs unit to meet the current rules on a duplex, the board is unwilling to legalize it as a duplex and it can only continue to be an accessory apartment.
I'll note that it does meet the lot size for the 2 families of 3,000 square feet per. I
Yes.
think that's an important one for B as well, but those are my concerns.
Although I would note in this case too, if it didn't meet the lot size, but this building had been there since before, again,
It
we
would be a
couldn't
chip
sit
against-
there and be like, you've got to buy more land. We would have to deal with it as it was. Now, if the whole building was knocked down in a tornado, well, now all that stuff would come into play on the rebuild. I know, right? Like, no, we're not at all.
I'm with you though, Charles, because in a way it does address the parking automatically. Just quick question. As it looks like it's already been used as it is already, those 4 parking spots, what kind of, I don't even know if we can answer this, what kind of like complaints have we had in the past?
There is no record of any complaint being filed. Now, that said, there's, since 2014, we've had a computer system where we log complaints, but before 2014, I'm not sure how complaints were handled. And obviously there's been different administrations through. So I guess I can't guarantee that back in 1969, nobody called and complained to whoever was in there. But we have no record of any complaint, and we didn't have anyone call in ahead of this going, hey, we've been complaining about this illegal situation.
And just going by Beacon, the people who owned the house prior, looks like it was 1988 when they bought it. So
I didn't check the date of purchase, but yeah,
So,
if you're seeing that, then
obviously
they were
for
there a long
30
time.
plus years.
Yep, and she was living, when I was through the house, she was living in the downstairs, and the upstairs had some leaks in the roof that was motivating some attempts to patch things, but it clearly was 2 units at that point when I was through it. And that's been a few years ago that I walked through, so.
Any other comments, questions? I did see a question there in the back. You still have a question there. Can you come please state your name and address?
My name's Don Ehrlich. I've lived there for 35 years. And the people that lived there before were the Loves, and she was raised in that house. So their family lived upstairs, but it was a group of them that originally lived there.
So it was family with part of the family living in the upstairs unit and part
Yeah,
living in the
yeah,
downstairs unit.
yeah.
So that would have been an accessory
Yeah.
apartment.
Yeah.
And it does only have one address, which also
Yeah.
would match. So that, I think that would firm up that my assertion that it was an accessory apartment, not a duplex. Even though it's 2 units either way.
It's
would-
never been a duplex,
sense.
no.
So,
No.
well, technically in today's day and age, there couldn't be that exterior entrance if it was an accessory apartment that's like completely separate. It would all have to be shared.
Right,
So,
right.
but that's
I get it.
helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close discussion for the board. I will now call for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve you're asking for the motion, right?
Yeah, for a motion.
I make a motion, we approve this thing with the conditions that the applicant enclose the exterior stairway as part of the house and must ensure that both units meet all building codes to the building inspector's satisfaction.
First, I have a second.
I'm going to apologize to you guys if you already know this, but this is what I would remind my boards of at this point in time. So obviously you've not got a second, which is fine. And it appears to me, reading the room, that we may end up potentially with a split vote. You have to have 3 voting together for any action to carry. So what
Correct.
I typically tell my boards is that does not mean we have to all sit here and not have dinner or that you have to glare or manipulate one another. You are a board of 5. So if you cannot get a vote when, if you try to go the other way and you can't get agreement, then the thing that you can perhaps do is agree as a group of 3 that you're going to continue it to the next meeting. And then hopefully you have more members present and you can get 3 members who agree with one course of action or the other at that point in time. And, we go from there and you're not stuck in a stalemate. So just
That'd
to
be a
give you some
table?
guidance, you would be, it's technically continued, but yes, it's tabled, whatever language you
continue
use.
it because of the fact that it's a kind of a quasi judicial function, but it's basically tabling it. So we would just put it.
Functionally, it's the same.
Yeah,
Can we get to the point where I can make the motion to deny it as well?
You can try to make a motion, see if it carries.
can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. There's no harm in that. Now you need to specify how your findings, like what changed in your findings for the record. Which you would be looking at a finding number 1 is the one that I think is the cleanest for you to put that under. And you would just note that you feel finding 1 is not met and why. You feel it doesn't meet the district provisions with regards to the parking and the size of the upstairs apartment, and thus you're required to deny it. So
Do we need to, does this motion need to die before I can make that?
I think we just need to say for the record that we didn't get a second on that motion, so that motion did not proceed forward.
So moved.
I make a motion, we deny it based on the finding number 1, that it does not meet the requirements of the ordinance, both on parking requirements and on the square footage of the apartments.
I will second. I have first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Nay.
Isaac Chavez,
Aye.
Charles Bates.
So now at this point, if you
make
could
a motion
agree
to
to.
I will second. Roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
What are we voting on now?
We're
So-
To continue it to the next meeting where you have more members because 3 members have to act together for any motion to carry.
Okay, it's been seconded? Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye.
Charles Bates.
Aye.
What date is your next meeting
The 28th, no, the 23rd.
for BZA? Oh, yes, because we have a special.
Special
So are you wanting to send it to the special meeting then? Will we have everybody present?
I'm not sure about Sam.
That's true. Before.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure we announce for people here, like what, so they know when to come back.
Thursday, April 23rd.
I think he said he would be here for the 23rd.
Okay, so you've got 4 at least, and you may or may not be able to get a 5th at any rate, but if that ends up being critical, there are ways we can address that if we don't get through it. So that's the 23rd at what time?
4:30.
Okay, so the 23rd at 4:30, for those of you following that, this will come back up for discussion under old business in this room.
All right, moving forward, taking a look at new business, we'll take a look at public hearing doc 2026-004. Petitioner Sandra Wessel requesting a special exception in the development standard variance for the following. The special exception is to allow an accessory apartment attached to a breezeway to a principal structure on a B residential district. The variance is to allow the property over the 50% allotted impervious surface ratio. Ms. Liz Thistle, can we please have the staff report?
Certainly. The applicant is Donald Wessel. This is on 10 East Green Street. And there's a house here that is Donald's house. He lives in it. And he's wanting to put in.
It's Sandra's house. I live in it.
Okay,
He's the contractor.
Donald Wessel's the contractor. Okay, does the owner live in the house?
Yes, I do.
Okay, that's the important part. So, all right, we'll avoid getting into the weeds. As you gathered from the last hearing, accessory apartments, my understanding was that the owner lived there, and obviously if that was a change, that would be very relevant. So, all right, so I'll rephrase that. The owner of the house lives there, did not realize Mr. Wessel was the contractor. And like we noted in the last hearing, this is an accessory apartment, which is special exception in the B residential district. It's use 2.09 on table A1. And in Frankfurt, you only allow accessory apartments if they're attached internally and they're part of the primary structure. So that's the situation with this particular request. Additionally, when you adopted the 2023 Unified Development Ordinance, you added impervious surface restrictions to help prevent accidental man-made flooding, as you go forward in the development of the city. And so you do have a number of sites like this one that already were at or over. So this was already over the requirements for its district. And when they worked with Rob to find a different way to attach everything to the house so it's all one unit. But even so, they are expanding their impervious surface a little bit. So when they're done, they would need a 58% impervious instead of the permitted 50. But I think if I remember, she's got the file, I think they're around like 54 or 55 now. I was going to say they're already over, they're not below 50. So, there's B residential zoning in all the other property immediately adjacent, but there is some C residential a half a block to the west, and there's a business zoned general business a half a block to the east. This is a little bit of a mixed use area. The site's on the north side of East Green Street, halfway between North Jackson and North Main. There's other single family dwellings surrounding it. There's also a commercial garage a half block to the east. That's the general business zoned area. The applicant has some health issues, as does his granddaughter, so his hope is to attach the existing detached garage behind the house to the house and add an addition for interior access so that it meets the requirements of the ordinance, and convert that into a 2-bedroom apartment to allow their son's family to move in and help care for both him and his granddaughter in one place. In this case, if the variance is not granted, then the garage cannot be attached to the house, which would then prevent it from meeting the required standards for the accessory apartment. So the BZA needs to handle both of these requests together, either approve them both or deny them both, because they both have to happen to have a workable plan. On the second page, there's an aerial. I did include the zoning on this just so you can see how that area is. And I've highlighted the garage behind the house that they would be attaching. There's a picture there at the bottom that also shows the garage, just so you can get a sense for it. It kind of matches the house right now and sits directly behind it. On the third page, I've included a screenshot of the use table, so you can see kind of where that falls, and then just noted that the variance is from UDO 304. First, I'm going to talk about the special exception, and then because this is kind of an all or none, I'm going to go right through the variance and then to one set of staff recommendations at the end. So there are a set of findings that must be found affirmatively in order to grant a special exception. First, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and all general regulations of the ordinance. So an accessory apartment within a principal dwelling structure is a special exception use in the B residential district. There are 8 supplemental standards that are required for an accessory apartment, and those are in section 502 of the UDO. It appears they are all met at the time of the writing of the staff report, in which case the finding would be met. I'm going to briefly go through them. There can be only one accessory apartment on any parcel. This would only be one. There's no other already there. 2, it has to be clearly secondary and incidental to the primary. Typically, we judge that by square footage. So the existing house is about 2,000 square foot per Beacon's assessor's records. The proposed apartment would be about 1,000 square foot, so that would clearly be secondary too. And the garage being converted already matches the house, so as long as they maintain that matching appearance through the addition, it would meet that standard. The accessory apartment has to be attached to or within the dwelling unit. It cannot be a mobile or manufactured home or in a temporary structure. That's met. 4, the owner of the property must reside in one unit or the other. In this case, the owner plans to continue to reside in the principal dwelling unit and then the family members in the accessory apartment. And they do understand this. 5, there may be no exterior stairways to upper level accessory apartments. So in this case, this will be a first floor apartment, so this is not applicable. There has to be an interior access between the accessory apartment and the principal building. So there will be an addition placed between these two that will include a breezeway and ramp area for ADA access. And there will be interior access where the common spaces of the two kind of come together right there. 7, all applicable building code and utility standards need to be met. Rob Bogue, City of Frankfurt building inspector, has been through the existing garage and spoken to the owners about his plans. Rob does feel that this structure will be able to meet residential building codes, and the owner understands that that is required. And that's important because sometimes older accessory buildings are just not suited to being turned into habitable structures. Todd Corey with City Utilities also did not express any concerns regarding this application. And 8, additional parking as needed or required by the ordinance shall be provided in off-street space, and there shall be safe and proper means of entrance and exit from the property. So 4 spaces will be needed. Standard is the same as the last hearing, 2 per unit. This is another one, though, where the driveway space is being used to provide those 4 cars worth. Rob Bogue stated that he did feel there was also room on the property to add a little bit of a loose gravel area to turn around if they have trouble getting themselves reversed in the existing driveway after they put the addition in. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to any other property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So while this use does require a special exception, it is not a significant change to how the property looks or functions, given that the existing garage is being converted. Staff is not aware of any complaints received regarding the house or garage placement as it sits now. The finding would appear to be met. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped, so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties does not impair health, safety, general welfare, or comfort, nor adversely affect the values of adjacent properties. So the apartment will be almost entirely within the existing structures. The neighboring properties should not notice a significant change in the appearance of the home. As long as the addition is constructed to match the existing house and garage, there should not be much effect on adjacent properties. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood and will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses already legally permitted in the district. So the accessory apartment will primarily be in the existing structures with just a small addition to attach everything and meet the ordinance requirements. There should not be a significant change in the view of the property or the feel of the neighborhood or the effect on neighboring properties from what's there now. The finding would appear to be met. 5, the proposed use shall organize the vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. The petition site does have a long driveway with space around it that the Frankfurt building inspector on his on-site inspection feels from his site visit is adequate for traffic movement to avoid conflict. The standard appears to be met. 6, the proposed use has taken or will take adequate measures to provide utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities. Dan Sheets, county surveyor, has stated he has no drainage concerns relative to the application. Todd Corey with City Utilities was not concerned about anything regarding this application. And Brian Kilman with the City Street Department has stated that granting this application would not affect any of their facilities negatively either. This finding would appear to be met. 7, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and shall be consistent with the City of Frankfort's comprehensive plan. So the UDO clearly states this is a special exception use, so it is appropriate to approve in the B residential district in some situations. This proposal involves converting existing structures in a way that meets building code and the standards of the UDO to allow 3 generations of family to reside on the property comfortably. Approving this use would seem to promote the objectives of the ordinance. The 2035 comprehensive plan generally notes that B residential land is primarily for single-family dwelling uses with 2-family or duplex uses in appropriate locations by special exception, which while this is not a duplex, it is a 2-family situation. Additionally, the plan does state on page 5 that we want to offer housing meeting residents' lifetime needs in accessible, connected neighborhoods with housing developments and public spaces that reflect their needs. On page 10, part 2, under growth management, that population growth should be accommodated by utilization of existing housing stock, which this would be in that category again, vacant land within the city limits or adjacent land in the urban growth area boundary. And then page 18, part 3, under community living, noting that any 2-family or multifamily structure shall obtain approval from either the Plan Commission through rezoning or the Board of Zoning Appeals through approval as a special exception. And while this is an accessory apartment, it is still a type of 2-family structure, so it does come to the board for that approval. An accessory apartment within the primary residence for additional family to move into the existing housing stock would fit within the comprehensive plan as long as it follows the standards in the Unified Development Ordinance, meets all building codes, and is approved by this board. The finding would appear to be met. So now I'm moving into the developmental variance request analysis for the impervious surface request. There are 3 findings that have to be affirmatively found in order to grant a variance to development or standards. First, the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Dan Sheets, county surveyor, did review this. He stated that allowing the additional impervious surface would not create any drainage concerns. Nothing injurious would appear to be created, and the finding would be met. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So typically with impervious surface, that comes down to whether or not the surveyor finds reason to believe flooding would occur. In this case, he does not think there will be any additional water runoff concerns as a result of this. It would not seem adjacent properties would be adversely affected, so the finding would appear to be met. And finally, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So in this particular property's case, it's already legal non-conforming because it predated the impervious surface adoption in the 2023 ordinance. So there's no way for them to add anything at all, even a stepping stone that's a 1 foot by 1 foot, without ending up putting themselves in violation of the ordinance. So they don't have a way to do anything and comply. The applicant did work with Rob Bogue, city building inspector, to come up with a plan that adds the least amount of additional impervious surface. Their original plan was actually going to have more. Part of this is going over existing driveways, but it still does require that variance. So the finding would appear to be met. In terms of staff recommendation, as a result of positively finding those findings, staff would recommend to approve the special exception based on the findings in the staff report with the condition, and this is just something that, yes, the ordinance says it, but I like to see BZAs include it so that it's just very, very clear that all the standards of UDO 502, that's those accessory apartment standards, must be met continuously, including the owner of the property must live in one of the units, and there must be interior access between the house and apartment constructed and maintained as accessible. Staff would also recommend to approve the developmental variance from UDO 304 to allow 58% of the lot to be covered with impervious surface. I personally did not receive any contact on this case ahead of the hearing. Did you, Grace?
No.
No, so we're not to say there's nobody here relative to it, but we haven't had any concerns brought to us ahead of time.
Okay, thank you, Liz. At this time, we'll hear from the petitioner to speak additionally.
Yeah, I'm Sandra Wessel. I own the land, and I'm adding my son and his wife onto my deed. It is and it's in the midst now. So it's not renters. It's going to be our family. And he comes all the way from Lafayette to take care of me and my granddaughter's special needs. So he has to travel a long way to help me. And he's, I've got other kids, but he's the only one that comes and does snow removal, trash takeout. And I just need help. And this helps us both out.
I do want to note,
neither here nor there for your plans, but if granted, these special exceptions do run with the land. So as long as you don't cease to use it in that way, it can be bought and sold and future owners can use it within the same constraints of
Yeah.
the same approval. So even though your intent is to have everybody on the deed,
Right.
once it's granted, if something changed, as
Right.
long as whoever is on the deed is in one of the two units, the other unit can be used as you see fit in terms of whether that be family or family paying rent or someone unrelated in it.
And I just wanted, I've been there since 2013. Me and my husband, before he passed, bought it in 2019. So I've been at that house since 2013. So,
And perfect. I appreciate the explanation. Just wanted to make sure that you knew it's the approval has to be looked at more broadly, even though your plan is
right,
appreciated.
right. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and open discussion to the public.
You don't have to.
Well, our plans were to take up pre-existing concrete, 16 by 35 foot section and put it back in the same spot. So we're not taking up more yard space. That's our plan. I mean, we're going to take up existing concrete, it's 16 by 35 and put the addition there so we don't cover more square footage of the yard.
Yep. I think there's just a little bit that it ends up
Yeah,
ducking
it's
into
just-
is what Rob
It's
said.
just
We
a little,
calculated
it's a
that.
breezeway, it's in between the house and
But
the.
you guys did a great job working
Yeah.
with Rob to redesign
Yeah.
that to try to minimize.
And my plans are to put extra drainage around the back of that addition so it goes out toward the front, like for the gutters and,
Make sure if you're moving that you're talking to city utilities and
yeah.
making sure that goes where it's supposed to go.
No, it's just rainwater. I mean, I'm along the foundation, I put the drainage in there so it don't build up behind there and cause, wood damage or flooding in the garage now.
Because there's already a drainage that my landlord put in.
Sure.
That goes out to the side.
And the garage now is there, it's already got a drain inside. It could be utilized too, so. In that purpose.
Rainwater can't go into the sewer.
It cannot. Well,
That's
that was,
that might be what.
that was why I
That's what
said
it's
that.
for, yeah,
but
it's,
because
Just make sure, because if they.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't just dump it randomly into the street either. So
Yeah.
that's why I made the general statement
Yeah.
is the utilities may require certain things to actually
I'll-
go to storm sewer or to
I'll
sanitary
comply with Whatever
sewer.
I gotta do, I mean, yeah.
I don't know what all those rules are sitting here. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure you know to check.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're just gonna pull up the 16 by 35 section of concrete that's already there of that 54%. And that's where we're just gonna put it back there instead of the original plan that we had before that. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close discussion for the public. At this time, we'll go ahead and open discussion for the board.
So, first question, is this gonna be separately addressed?
So I can only speak from what's typical as a planner. From my understanding, it hasn't been discussed internally, but normally I do not recommend allowing an accessory apartment to have a separate address because it encourages people to try to split things in ways that are not legal. It's not so much an issue for you guys because you only allow interior, but when you get out in the rural areas, if they're in an accessory structure, we actually require them all to tie into one set of utilities so that they're not separate to make it harder for somebody later on to try to backdoor it without having to come in for a permit or requesting an address. So my advice would be typically you do not give an accessory apartment a unique address. It's up to whoever lives there to figure out whose mail is whose
Right.
and they share an address.
And the reason I asked that is public safety response. That's anytime we have an accessory apartment, it's either are we moving to a separate door or are we going through the house? So
Yeah.
that's just something that.
Now we do,
consider, But I agree that it shouldn't be separate.
I would note, because I handle the 911 layers for Beacon, we do try to make notes internally on things like this and pass it over to central dispatch so that they're aware that there's an additional approved unit. And if we notice there's something funky about the entrance, we try to make a note and make sure Renee gets that. But obviously it's not foolproof,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
so.
And then I think that one of the key points of this is that the UDO 502 must be met continuously. I think for me, that's a key point of this.
Anything else? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close discussion for the board. At this time, I'll go ahead and call for a motion.
I make a motion that we approve based on the staff's recommendations and findings in the staff report. And that the condition that all standards of the UDO 502 must be continuously included, including the owner of the property must live in one of the units and there must be interior access between the house and apartment constructed and maintained as accessible. Do I also need to say something about the second half?
We should do that in a separate motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez,
Aye.
Charles Bates.
I'll now open the motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the staff's recommendation for the developmental variance from UDO 304 to allow the 58% of impervious surface.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez,
Aye.
Charles Bates.
Motion passes.
So you guys can work with Grace or Miranda, whoever you've had as a contact, and Rob, and work on getting what information you need to get in to get those permits and get started. Yep, absolutely.
What's that?
Tomorrow, yeah, whenever you're ready, just reach out to the building services office.
Okay, at this time, we have a city council meeting. It's going to be a start at 6:30. So I'm checking with the board and that if we're okay, just to recess for 10 minutes, and then we will continue with BZA business.
The city council should be pretty quick.
And I'm going to note for those of you that have already been here for hearings, there's no necessity that you hang out for the future hearings. You're more than
Yeah, you
welcome
guys are
to
free to leave.
go and not return if no one's offended.
Do we need to vote that?
No, we can
All right.
just recess by consensus. So,
Okay, at this time, we'll recess for 6:28.
okay. So we will reconvene as soon as the city council meeting is completed.
No, just leave it.
I could, if I just leave it, that's
I
perfect.
gotta move.
Say, it took me a moment to get it all sorted. Although I don't know why I brought my mileage in. I like had a whole stack.
Mileage?
Yeah, it was in my stack of stuff I didn't want to forget to take today, and the rest all related to the hearing. And apparently I didn't grab my pen, but I grabbed my mileage.
I just think that'll be a good.
These are nice. They have a nice feel.
They have a metal one.
So we'll have to stop recording. if-
Like, feel the metal one. Like,
Oh, that's
I know, and it's
Yeah.
like cheap,
nice.
but it's a cheap enough pin that it's
Right.
expensive.